Breaking news, people. How you doing? My name is Tim Black for TBTV, TTL Media, and I got a story that was brought to my attention by some folks on Instagram. Shout yourself out, Instagram folks. I'm trying to find out who that was. Someone jumped in my live stream. I think it was Freedom, somebody named Freedom. And they said, Tim, there's a story. Happened in Dallas. A female officer goes into the wrong apartment. She thought it was her apartment. And she kills the man inside. Now this man here, Botham Shem Jean, his life was taken yesterday by this officer, and also a friend of mine on on Twitter by the name of Van Dyke. He sent me like an article about this. So folks, believe it or not, this man's life, he was taken. He was 26 years old. Last night, an officer comes into his apartment, thinking, the story is, she thought it was her apartment, and then shot him because she thought he was an intruder in his own apartment. I smell fish, and I'm not at the fish market.
Last night, just before 10 p.m., a Dallas officer called police dispatch saying that she had just been involved in a shooting at these apartment complex in the 1200 block of South Lamar. Now, preliminary information suggests that the officer was in full uniform and just finished working a full shift. And then she reported to responding officers that when she came home, she entered into the victim's apartment believing it was her own apartment. And at some point, she pulled her weapon and shot the victim. The responding officers administered aid to the 26-year-old male victim until the paramedics arrived, at which time he was transported to an area hospital where he was pronounced deceased.
You said the belief is that this officer went into what she believed was her own apartment, but it was not. It was a different apartment in the building, and this person who is now dead was inside there at the time?
That is correct. That's what preliminary information is suggesting at this time.
Did you think that this was an intruder in her apartment?
Well, I won't go into that information right now. I mean, we have not interviewed her, and this is just, like I said, this is just a preliminary statement. We still have a lot to do in this investigation, so there's a lot.
The first thing I didn't like about this was he says the officer worked a full shift. What's a full shift for an officer? Why throw that in that the officer worked a full shift? Are you trying to say that officers are incapable of working full shifts without coming home and going into the wrong apartment and shooting and killing a man? How long is a full shift? 24 hours? So are you overworking officers to the point where they kill people like this? I don't think that's the case. So we'd have a lot more killings where officers just worked a full shift and walked into other people's apartments. So that's the first thing. This is the most obvious thing, though. How the hell do you enter an apartment that's not your own apartment if you don't have a key? Okay? Don't you need a key to enter someone else's apartment? According to neighbors told the Dallas Morning News that they heard the commotion of police responding to the shooting. We heard cops yelling. So the officer, after shooting and killing this man, then she calls dispatch. That's what the neighbors heard. But they say a key fob is needed for every door. That's what one resident said. So you need a fob to get in the door. Another resident, declined to give their name, said she saw blood at the apartment. Doors have either alarm codes, key fobs, or regular keys to get inside. A third resident, I'm leaving names out, said residents' keys only work for their own doors. Yeah, residents' keys only work for their own doors. That makes sense, right? They confirmed that residents have to manually lock their doors when they leave. This is all basic stuff. Now, there is an update to this story because I guess it's so fishy that now they have turned this story or this investigation over to the Texas Rangers to join the investigation into I don't care what planet you're from, you have to be like me on this. Come on. I think we share same, like, common sense when we look at a story like this. First of all, it makes no sense. This officer's story makes no sense. I can't imagine walking into anyone's apartment at all, right? That's not my apartment. But even if you are so, I don't know, intoxicated or high or on medication, which would still be high, like, how could you possibly do that? But my thing is, once you get inside the apartment, wouldn't it dawn on you that you're in the wrong apartment? It would have to, right? Like, there is no way, in what scenario do you not know that you're in the wrong apartment? When? And when did she come upon Mr. Botham Shem Jean? When did she come upon him? How long was she in the apartment? Like, these are all very good questions. Now, according to the most updated report that I have here about the Texas Rangers being called into the investigation, first of all, I think there's a reason why they decided to outsource this. Something about the officer whose name has not been released. Something about the story just doesn't add up, is what I'm thinking. Even to the police. So, you know, they got the wall of blue, the blue wall of silence. But even in this situation, I mean, just so much covering they can do. I mean, you walked into a man's home and killed him in his own house. They are going to test the officer for drug and narcotics in their bloodstream. A manslaughter warrant has been issued for the Dallas officer who police say shot and killed a man after entering an apartment she believed was her own on Thursday night. A blood sample will be drawn from the officer to test for drugs and alcohol. Police still haven't released the name of the officer. That's all we have right now, folks. But I just wanted to bring this here to you to let you know what's going on there in Dallas in this story that is, it's crazy. It sounds very unbelievable, but it also is very frightening for the residents and heartbreaking for the family. Now, this young man, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Botham. The young man's name, Botham Shem Jean. The St. Lucia Times, a newspaper published on the Caribbean island where Mr. Botham is from, said Jean was the son of a former permanent secretary of the island nation. The newspaper said the dead man had been an employee of PricewaterhouseCoopers and lived in a gated community. Citing a relative of Jean, the St. Lucia Times reported that the officer lived in an apartment on another floor of the same apartment complex. See, now I'm really confused, guys. You not only went to the wrong apartment, to me that was already outlandish, unbelievable. But I was thinking at least you lived on the same floor. So you went to the wrong apartment on the wrong floor too? Now, yeah, test this officer not only for blood and alcohol, but test them for having a past disagreement with this young man. Was there a relationship between the two? Texas Rangers, do your investigation, do a thorough investigation. I think what we have here is some type of connection between the officer and the deceased, the man who was murdered. His family is distraught, obviously. They were ready to pick out presents for his birthday that's coming up soon, and now they have to pick out a casket.
Dallas officer called police dispatch saying that she had just been involved in a shooting at these apartment complex in the 1200 block of South Lamar. Now, preliminary information suggests that the officer was in full uniform and just finished working a full shift. And then she reported to responding officers that when she came home, she entered into the victim's apartment believing it was her own apartment. And at some point, she pulled her weapon and shot the victim.